Hello there, very good evening to you. This is Face the Nation. We're coming to you live and direct from our studios here in Ratmalana, Stein Studio Complex in Ratmalana. Now, today's topic of discussion is the looming crisis in the power and energy sector in Sri Lanka. Now, climate change is literally breathing down our necks. So what is Sri Lanka supposed to do? And this does impact you at home. It impacts our economy, it impacts the way we work, the way we think, the way we live. Power and energy crisis in Sri Lanka. Should we stick to coal or should we go in for renewables? In 2015, President Maithripala Sirisena ratified the Paris Agreement on climate change. There are serious challenges facing the sector. Now, there are also several stakeholders that are supposed to work hand in hand with regard to the power and energy sector in Sri Lanka. We have the Ministry of Power and Renewable Energy. We have the Strategic Enterprise Management Agency, or SEMA. We have the Ceylon Electricity Board. We have the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka. Several such stakeholders. So where are we really headed? That's what we'll discuss today on Face the Nation. Let me very quickly introduce our guests this evening. We have with us today Mr. Asoka Abegunawardana. He is the Executive Director of the Strategic Enterprise Management Agency, or SEMA. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening.
Also joining us is Dr. Suren Bhattagoda, Secretary of the Ministry of Power and Renewable Energy, joining us for the first time. Good evening to you. Also joining us is Mr. Damitha Kumar Singha. He is the Director General of the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka. And also Dr. Nishan Dimel, who is the Executive Director of Verite Research. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Face the Nation. Now, my first question is directed to Dr. Bhattagoda, who is the Secretary to the Ministry of Power and Renewable Energy. Dr. Bhattagoda, we are told that the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka, the PUCSL, has formulated a report highlighting losses amounting to billions of rupees that the country will incur as a result of the inaction of the CEB, the Ceylon Electricity Board, in implementing planned power plants in terms of the long-term generation plan. Now, could you elaborate to us as to why the CEB is allegedly refusing to go ahead with the approved plan? Aren't the two stakeholders supposed to work hand in hand towards a common cause? Your time starts now.
Thanks, Sonali. Thank you for arranging this very important discussion. It's not delaying per se. Ceylon Ministry Board is a very complex organization. So many, as you correctly mentioned, so many stakeholders involved in this: Treasury and all the technical committees, unions, PUCSL, Economic Council, and so many things involved. There's a last 2 years discussion on PUCSL and the CEB, and negotiating and discussing submission report, getting approvals, and on the agreement on the long-term generation plan. But in the meantime, short term, up to 2020, no dispute basically. CEB and the PUCSL basically has agreed the power plant schedule, which they are implementing. There are some delays, some evaluation, assessment, all these things. But according to CEB, there's no power cut or any power shortages basically. Whatever the agreed plan by PUCSL, up to 2020, there was a strong power plant schedule which is being implemented. But beyond 2020 is the issue of whether the coal included or not. That's the debate. But CEB strongly suggests they have a mandate to reduce the unit cost. So you know, always every meeting when you go, private sector debates, and Sri Lanka is the highest unit costs in terms of the electricity. That's why economy is not moving. The CEB is being criticized for not reducing the cost of energy, and so on and so forth. So the CEB is of the opinion that if we are to reduce the cost of power, which is very important for the economy. Coal must be in the picture, one thing. And number two is CEB is mandated to make sure that the sustainable power supply and energy security of the nation must. The government has asked, you must ensure uninterrupted power supply without any problem. In order to do this, the firm energy, which is must base load and all these things, CB's opinion, there has to be a very strong mix of coal, LNG, hydro, solar, wind, so on and so forth, must be there in order to assure there's a sustainable or more energy security in the country. So they are fighting for coal must be a significant mix in the picture. That's the whole reason. But we guarantee that no power cut or in the meantime implementing all schedules.
Dr. Bhattacharya, how would you respond to the allegation that the CEB or the CEB Engineers Union is not allowing for renewables? How would you respond to that allegation?
In fact, that's very, very wrong argument. CEB Engineers Union is not against the renewables. If you look at whatever the proposed long-term generation plan, there are huge, large volume of renewables included. For example, more than 30% of total power generation are renewables. For example, next 2 years, the 200 megawatt of solar, up to 2025, I think more than 1,600 megawatt of renewables are included. So what the debate is, in order to absorb more renewable, we need more firm energy, which is coal is one of the base load plant, plus LNG, and what the debate is, they want mix. While promoting renewables, accommodating the Paris agreements, everything, so they are not against coal or against solar or wind or renewables. So their technical argument is, in order to absorb more and more renewables, we should have a strong base load as well. That's the point, which is they are not against renewables.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Bhattacharya. I next move my attention to Mr. Damitha Kumar Singha, who is the Director General of the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka. Just so that we keep the conversation very comprehensible to the general public, Ms. Kumar Singha, would I be accurate in saying that the PUCSL acts as the watchdog of the CEB and the regulatory body for electricity?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Now, recently you released a report, the PUCSL released a report claiming that there's a delay in implementation of generation plants, that is with regard to renewable energy and so on, and that we have to, as a result, depend on high-cost alternatives, and this might end up in at least 50 billion rupee loss to the country. Is this what you're saying?
Yeah. No, actually what we are saying is that generation plan is there. So according to the generation plan, the plant should be procured, installed and commissioned at certain definite time intervals. Now we observe, as well as CB has submitted the new implementation plans to us, the difference between the generation plan and the latest implementation plans is considered as the delay. So if you look at that delay and you substitute the energy that should have been generated through the new plants by way of high cost alternatives, the cost to the nation, cost to the CEB, cost to the economy would be in the range of about $50 billion from the current deviation from the generation plan to the implementation plan.
Right. So, Mr. Kumar Singha, how do we overcome this? How do we overcome this? In your opinion, how do you overcome this issue? Now, there's clearly an issue between the PUCSL and the CEB. So, what's your solution to this issue?
No, actually, I don't see any big issue here.
Okay.
The issue is the cost that is incurred by the economy because of delay in implementation.
Right.
So, what we are saying is that the best thing to do is to implement the plan as per the plan without delay. So that is the responsibility of the Ceylon Electricity Board to implement the plan. So I think now they should take action and get these plants on ground at the right point of time.
Okay. Also, since the PUCSL acts as the regulatory body with regard to electricity, what is your take on the continued usage of coal, and what of renewable energy and other sources?
Yeah, I would like to...
Do you agree with what Dr. Bhattagoda said about that mix? He said that coal must be a significant proportion in the mix?
I will put it in this way. Now, I think this is the policy we have, the latest one of the ministry, and it says to make Sri Lanka energy self-sufficient by 2030. So energy self-sufficient by 2030.
Right.
All right. So what does that mean? Then we have to have the energy sources within the country. So we are talking about the renewables and the mana gas, if you are to make this country energy self-sufficient.
Okay.
Right? Number one. Number two, then the other thing is the cost factor. Now if you look at the latest costing, the latest wind tender was closed at about 10 rupees a kilowatt hour, and the solar 1186 or 1180 rupees a kilowatt hour, and the natural gas was closed around 1490 rupees a kilowatt hour, which includes a 2-year period in running in diesel also. So it should be lower than the 1499. And the third one, the other one is the Norachole coal price right now is 1860. So, and the diesels are going above 22-23 rupees. So if you are to reduce the cost, then you have to have the least cost plants in place at the right time. So the least cost plants are natural gas, solar and wind at the moment, if you look at this. So I think the plan, generation plan, consists of these plans, and the policy refers to that, gas and the renewables. I think all are in line. So I don't see anybody objecting to this policy and the plants in the plan, considering the ground cost at the moment. Right. So I think it's a matter of implementing that. They are only, even CEB can come out with come out of the financial issue. So if you can get energy at 10 rupees, 11 rupees, 14 rupees, you have to go and get those plants quickly.
Okay.
There's no other way.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kumar Singha. The next question is to Mr. Asoka Abegunawardena, Executive Director, Strategic Enterprise Management Agency. Now, according to your website, you are tasked with creating the enabling environment for optimizing strategic state enterprises by working closely with the President's Office, line ministries, regulatory authorities and the boards of various state businesses of strategic importance to Sri Lanka. Mr. Abegunawardena, you've been very vocal with regard to the power and energy sector in Sri Lanka. In the light of this current looming crisis, what is your take on this?
Actually, we are already faced with a crisis situation, meaning that annually there's a demand growth rate of 5%, and at present, even today, this year we are getting emergency power, and until 2021 or so, there's no long-term power plant that will be commissioned during that period. So in order to meet this increasing demand, annually we need to get more and more oil-fired emergency power plants, and the cost is now this year it's roughly about 40 rupees per unit. So we are already purchasing expensive oil-fired power from private sector. So we are already faced with a crisis situation, and annually this is growing, and by 2020 we need to have more and more emergency power to cater to the increasing demand. If not, then there will be a shortage. If we are to cater to that demand with oil-fired power plants, then we will be going for expensive power plants, meaning that we have to spend ultimately either the taxpayers or ratepayers has to pay this. So why this is happening? Now we should have a plan for us to commission during this year, last year and the years to come. That was not happening because of the tug of war between the regulator and the CEB regarding the generation expansion plan. So from the government policy wise, it's clear that government policy is clear on this matter, 100% renewables. How soon? Then we had a discussion, and that's why the government came up with the idea that we will be getting 100% indigenous resources by 2030. So that was the local government policy in place, and worldwide, globally, we have to understand the global trend. Now what we are benefiting today, the human civilization right now, it's purely because of fossil fuels. The industrial revolution started with coal, and then we had much more efficient oil and gas. Now how long we can sustain, how long we can generate power and energy from these sources is the issue. Now there were two issues we were discussing. Firstly, the scarcity of resources, the resources are depleting, and the secondly is the climate change. The climate change issue led to a situation that we cannot, even though we have coal mines, we cannot burn that. Even though we have oil fields, we cannot burn oil. If you do so, then we will be facing severe climate change related issues. Even now, the global atmospheric temperature, atmospheric concentrations as far as carbon dioxide is concerned, it has increased about 50%. And the global average temperature has increased by 1 degree centigrade. And the mean sea level has risen by 20 centimeters. It has already happened. And the globally we are discussing about shifting away from fossil fuels towards renewables. So the argument globally is to shut down the existing coal plants, move away from oil-fired power plants and vehicles to electricity and renewables. That's the global trend. So globally we are moving away from the fossil fuel era. We are almost there for the sustainable era. So energy-wise, we have to get rid of fossil fuels and go to the renewables. The advantage in Sri Lanka is that we did not have coal mines. We will never have coal mines. There's a possibility of having oil fields in the Mana Basin, but we are blessed with year-round sunshine and we have renewable energy. So if we are to tap that, then we can easily cater to the increasing demand for the future from renewables. So the government policy is clear. We have to go for renewables. The worldwide trend is clear. We have to go for renewables. But there was an issue. We were discussing about the prices. But during the last 5 years, the solar prices has reduced by 80%. Wind prices have reduced by 80%. Now, as Damit explained, coal is expensive. It's only second to oil. It's expensive than renewables. There's no question about the policy cost. If there's a policy cost, if policy is expensive, then there should be other ways and means of meeting that, bridging that gap. But there's no policy issue as such at present. So the trend is clear. There are certain technical issues that should be resolved, that can be resolved. So the future should be renewables. Even to cater to the short-term demand, we need to give a better tariff for the renewables so that we can get rid of emergency power.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Abe Gunawardena. Finally, I move my attention to Dr. Nishan Dimel, Executive Director of Verite Research. She's joining us for the first time. Fantastic to have you on board. Dr. Nishan, you're an advocate for advanced sustainability, sustainable technology. Do you think Sri Lanka can move towards a future without coal? We heard Mr. Abe Gunawardena speaking very strongly about how important it is to have renewables, how we need to move away from the coal era and move towards renewables. But Dr. Bhattagoda had an opposing view. So lots of different opinions. What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you very much, Sonali. It's great to be here. I think I want to start off just by saying that I agree with Dr. Bhattagoda about what he said, that it's quite important for the country to reduce the price of electricity. And I think that is a good way to focus our debate and ask, how do you make electricity more affordable? Because affordability has a significant impact for Sri Lanka in terms of investment and economic growth. The high cost of electricity that Sri Lanka has in the region, even compared to countries like Singapore, certainly India and China, is making Sri Lanka less attractive as an investment destination. But affordability is not the only thing you need to look at. You also need to look at availability, what I think Damita calls energy security. And also you need to look at the acceptability of the energy that you get. Is it polluting, externality, social costs? All these three things are quite important. Now, when you look at Sri Lanka's ranking on energy indexes, it's unfortunate that Sri Lanka does very poorly on the energy access and security indexes. The global index on that puts Sri Lanka at 103rd rank out of 127 countries. The World Economic Forum that looks at electricity, the quality of electricity supply, puts Sri Lanka in 96th position out of 137 countries. Now this is affecting. So not just the affordability, but the quality of supply, the regularity and the availability is affecting Sri Lanka's attractiveness for investment. Now, I think then the big debate is, well, what is it that's going to make energy, more secure, provided consistently at an acceptable quality and affordable? I think on the affordability issue, Asoka gave excellent figures, which I agree with. I have precise numbers that the solar power costs in terms of the solar units or cells have come down between 61 to 77%, depending on whether you look at households or commercial production, since 2010. The price reduction is that great. When you look at storage, battery storage capacity, the prices have fallen by 75% in the last 6-7 years. So really, and when you look at the United States, the Energy Information Administration, the EIA, the Global International Energy Agency, all of them show that solar and wind are now amongst emerging as the cheapest solutions. The problem with solar and wind is that there is fluctuations in energy. But that is why the technology in terms of reduced cost of batteries and storage is becoming a game changer in terms of energy in the world. Now, I understand that the CEB has sort of restrictions in terms of how it plans, and it looks back at the prices of the past 3, 4, 5 years and makes simulations based on the past. But actually, when you're going through a technology and cost transition in the scale that we're doing for new energy and for solar and wind power, you can't drive forward by looking at the rearview mirror. Because the rearview mirror is telling you what's behind you, not what's ahead. And there's a serious mistake I think we can make quite easily and in a sense with good intention of not recognizing the transition in costs that are taking place and how we need to plan accordingly. The problem with solar and wind is because of the fluctuations, you need, even with some battery storage, you will still need augmented energy source, another energy source that can fire up quite quickly to make up for the fluctuations and then fire down after that. Now, unfortunately, coal can't be fired up and fired down quickly. You need something like a natural gas plant if you're going to fire up and fire down quickly. So ideally, if you're looking at this energy transition that we are going through in the world, you need solar, wind with battery storage, and you need a complementary energy source that can ramp up and ramp down fast. And that is where I think probably natural gas is the best alternative we had. So it's about thinking differently about what our options are in terms of reducing affordability, improving accessibility, and also I think there is a really acceptability issue that when we look at coal, it's very impossible to evaluate coal without looking at the economic cost and asking what the social cost is. And the costing done for 30%, 90% coal capture to reduce environmental cost makes coal quite expensive. I think I should stop there.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Nishan Dimel, Executive Director, Verity of Research. Before opening the floor for questions, I'd like to ask Dr. Bhattagoda if you'd like to respond to the statements made by Mr. Abe Gunawardena.
Now, I'm in the power sector many years. I was a Deputy Secretary Treasury at that time. These figures, people say a lot of things. The Ashok was talking about the delay of in this oil-fired plant cost 40 rupees per unit. Damita was talking about 50 billion delay cost. Those are the estimate. Those are actually misleading figures actually, to be honest. Coal power plant was stopped in 2015. Then only CEB has to change whole thing back to again. Then we are talking about this emergency power. So we had to, there are unexpected drought came up with this 2016 and all these things. This year, now for example, now we have 46% of getting from hydro for example. 2015, we had a 20 billion profits. 20 billion profit 2015 because of get good rain. 2016, no rain, we are lost. So the emergency power, we got about 60 megawatt, which is we took last year in case there are power shortages. We didn't want to use too much. The cost is about 28 rupees because we got it for competitive tender. So it's 28 rupees altogether. And we have the power plant, which were larger power plant, which were bought on competitively or whatever, more than 30 rupees per unit. In fact, the emergency power that we so-called 60 megawatt out of 4,000, very small amount actually, we're talking about it. We are ourselves condemned by talking very big in this 60 megawatt thing. We bought it only to just supplement in case of we need it. And many power plants which are running now, cost is more than 28 rupees. It's emergency cheap actually. So I mean, it's wrong figures. So people, general public think, oh my God, we are buying emergency. It's not emergency. Mm-hmm. These are the unit costs. So this we are doing, and up to 2020, we have a bigger plan. Until such time only we are getting this to make sure that energy supply is there. So these figures are misleading actually.
Mr. Kumar Singh, would you like to respond to that allegation that your figures are misleading?
No, actually what I want to say is that what I quoted wind price is the last tendered price awarded to a company. So wind price is the real price. Solar price is the real price. Natural gas price is the real price, and the Norachole cost is the CB submitted cost, which is real. So I don't see anyone can say these figures are wrong, because those are publicly available tenders that were awarded. So number one. Number two, in that I think Dr. Bhatta referred to this report regarding the loss. It was calculated on a certain methodology based on these figures, plus the delays taken into consideration and the cost of the alternative resources. So the figure can be 10% plus or minus in this. But if this is not acceptable, then the relevant people should come out and say this is the right figure. Mm-hmm. Without giving a right figure, I don't accept any arguments on the figure.
Right. Okay. Very quickly, Dr. Demel, you wanted to respond.
Yes, I agree with Dr. Bhattagoda about the prices that he says again. It is rather an interesting thing, as Dr. Bhattagoda said, that emergency power can in Sri Lanka sometimes be cheaper than installed power of existing suppliers. Now that should really not be a source of comfort but a source of alarm. Because it tells us that actually we have negotiated power purchasing agreements with companies at exorbitant rates. So as Dr. Bhattagoda said, if the priority is to bring prices down, I think the first step is to renegotiate those contracts. I was actually working with the government when the contracts were negotiated. Dr. Gunaruwan, who's part of the university, analyzed those contracts and alerted all of us to the problem that these contracts were unreasonably costly. But sometimes you can't prevent governments from doing what they're doing. And today we are paying the price. So actually, before we talk about anything else, I think Dr. Bhattagoda's own analysis suggests that we have a very serious problem, that it is probably opportune to renegotiate existing contracts, because if you're paying more for existing contracts for long-term suppliers than you're paying for emergency power, you have a very bad contractual situation that needs to be reevaluated, and that is serious for the country.
Thank you for bringing that point out, Dr. Nishan Demel. I'd like to open the floor for questions. We're joined by Nadeem Majid and also Charitha Fernando and Nanel Jayawardena. We'll start off with Nadeem.
Thanks, Sonali. Dr. Bhattagoda, I'd like to come to you first. Is it the CEB's job to decide on the energy policy of this country?
No, it's a government policy.
But the CEB is resisting implementing government policy.
No, not true actually. Now what happened is we have people misleading the general public. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the government was implementing certain coal power plant. Until 2015, we were developing a Sampur coal power plant.
That's not happening anymore.
They stopped, exactly. Then there was a debate whether to stop completely coal or not. The CEB, on the one hand, as a technical institution, they proposed continuously to the government, we should not give up the coal because of the cost issue they were talking about, and also basically to, as I mentioned, to control the system, there must be balance. They talk about a lot of technologies. If the coal issue is environment, they are talking about is there are high tech, clean coal technology, all these things. So
this clean coal technology, we're hearing a lot about this from the US president as well. He's talking about clean coal too. But I think the reality is that you have to accept that coal is not clean, and that there are high externalities, as Nishan Demel was talking about. You spoke of the need for, it sounded oxymoronic at the beginning, where in order to absorb more renewables, you need to have a stronger baseload. And that baseload can be supplemented by coal-fired power plants.
Coal or LNG.
What's wrong with LNG?
LNG is a big debate actually. LNG, see what happened is at the moment we don't have LNG terminal infrastructure. We are not able to develop it so far.
But the agreements have been signed for a floating LNG terminal.
Not yet. So last many years we are debating without LNG. So if we stop the coal, next option is the diesel or the oil. Even the tender that we are talking about, Damitsa was talking about delaying some LNG plant. Even though this plant is commissioned, we have run that on oil or heavy fuel, the oil plant, until we get the LNG plant. So far we are working on it, but it will come later a little bit. So question is now, there are significant policy shift. As a CEB is a major economic sector in the country. When we shift into a policy, we have a lot of debate going on, discussion, parliament, like this forum, for example, you are as a media, as a company, our agency, you are talking too much on this. So that's the responsibility. Newspapers. So CEB is talking, and they are changing the policies and all these things. The government. This is actually a significant policy shift. So there are some people support coal, some support LNG, some says 100% renewable. So but
the facts that we have are showing us that coal is not the cheapest anymore.
No,
It may have been the cheapest some time ago, but right now, if you look at those facts, so these are prices that were quoted by the Ceylon Electricity Board. Am I right, Mr. Kumar Singh? So the Ceylon Electricity Board itself has accepted that coal is more expensive, and that is without the external costs, without the spillover costs of environmental and social impact. There are already, we can see it, you can see with your eyes the problems that communities living in and around Noracholai are facing with coal dust, with fly ash. Where is all of this talk of clean coal coming from? And then I ask myself the question, the CEB is not implementing an approved generation expansion plan. The implementation plan takes longer. Maybe we can dispute, you can dispute what the PUCSL is saying about the extent of these losses. Maybe it's not 50 billion, maybe it's more like 20 billion, but it's still a loss. Right? It's still a massive loss that this country, debt-ridden as it is, cannot afford to take on. Who benefits at the end of the day when the CEB is not doing its job, it refuses to listen to the regulator or the government, and it refuses to implement policy that is for the betterment of the country?
See, I don't know how to respond this actually. See, the CEB and the ministry, we are working a lot of under so many conditions. Now, for example, in 2020, we are negotiation completed to build 500 megawatt LNG power plant with India. Agreement signed, everything started. Now, by this month, it will be finalized, finished. All negotiation completed. The power plant will come in 2021. Then another 500 megawatt LNG plant with Japan. Negotiation completed last whole month, CEB and we all together, even Japan, come back, negotiation completed, which is well coming again 2021, 1000 megawatt. Another 400 megawatt LNG plant, Hambantota. Those all three plants proposed by the government, as government to government arrangements and discussion and all these things. When negotiation completed, just almost completed, now we are talking. There are a lot of power plants coming by 2020. And onward, many power plants coming on the line, right? Those are all done by CEB engineers, and negotiating, we are doing. Another LNG power plant now on the tender we call 300 megawatt, which will be a lot of debate going on, so many investors.
So why are they still hanging on to coal?
No, after those power plants are coming up, there are no delay per se. So only if there are short, which is actually 2018-19. So if rain comes, of course we don't have short them. So that for that 2-year period, we are talking about the 3 power plant, 300 megawatt, just we call tenders, barge mounted plant which was approved by them, another 100 megawatt supplementary power which is tendered, emergency we call it. So there are no power shortage. After 20, lot of LNG plant coming, so we will have a surplus power actually. So the coal come to picture is actually CEB engineers as a professional, they think depending on the LNG or anything is very risky. To give example,
is coal more
give me 1 minute. After I taken as a secretary in 2015, I started buying coal at $48. Now we are buying about $95. So within 1 year, coal price went up from it was started for 80, went down to 48, now went back to 96. Can you imagine within 1 year, 48 to 96 coal. LNG same during our tenure. Earlier LNG price was 9, 20, 9, 16, 17. It dropped to about 5. Now again about 7. So these prices are fluctuating. Nobody can predict this oil prices. We remember 2008. Oil
so
price,
you can predict the renewable prices?
No, everything so go down. But renewable, see, other mistake the people are misleading by these people are, everybody think we can supply our total energy by solar. If that is so, we can ask, anybody can start solar power plant. Doesn't work like this. Until, as Risa mentioned, until battery storage power come. But solar energy cannot solve in the night, you can't have electricity. But the people, the poor people think having solar, whole problem can be. This is not correct. But we are targeting, but Ashoka was talking about 2030. Yes, originally we thought our Mana gas will come quickly, but it delayed. Now we revise our target to have a self-sufficiency in 2045 or 2050 energy policy. But solar, by that time we think battery storage cost will go down. First, as I mentioned, 75% battery storage cost down.
The largest battery in the world was
exactly. So by 2045, if you have a coal power plant, you can just retire those coal power plant. We can have a solar energy. But today's context, it's a completely misleading to the public. We cannot get the solar or wind can have, but not the 100% solution. We should have something. So why not have?
So why not LNG then?
LNG is there.
Why
LNG must be there. Hydro should be there. Coal must be there. So it's a mix. So as a Paris, so CB plan, which include the coal, has captured fully the commitment to the Paris Agreement. In the Paris Agreement, we said power sector will reduce 4% of the total emission from power sector and 16% by unconditional, but 20%. Those Paris Agreement commitments are captured. We can have coal with those conditions. If
Mr.
we can,
Singer, do you agree with that?
Actually, I'm not very familiar with the Paris Agreement. Let me put it this way: in our generation plan, it is very clear that we are working towards 60% renewables by 2030. When you say renewables, it includes the large hydros, which will be about 30% by that time, right? Then we have the existing coal power plant, which will supply about 15 to 25% of the energy in 2030.
And that's existing.
That is existing. And then the new LNG power plants, which Dr. Batagoda mentioned, which are also in the plan, approved plan, will supply about 20 to 25% of energy. So you are looking at 60-20-20 mix, which is a beautiful mix with 60% renewables, 20 to 25% gas, 15 to 20% coal. I think, and this policy is also aiming at that.
Right.
Right.
But
So we should move.
Mr.
towards that.
Your major play in drafting these energy policies, and you sit at the table, advise the government on energy policies as well in your capacity as chairman and managing director at SEMA. Dr. Batagoda just mentioned that it had been revised from 2030 to 2045, 2050. Has it been revised?
No, it's not. I mean, they have the Ministry of Power Energy, Power and Renewable Energy, because of the pressure of the Ceylon Electricity Board trade unions.
So the Ceylon Electricity Board has revised the government's
policy. It's not
policy.
a government policy per se, because he was the secretary when this 2030 target was set. Now it's surprising that Dr. Batagoda is now promoting coal in Sri Lanka, because I first met him not in Sri Lanka but in Hague in 1999 at COP6. He was the lead negotiator at the climate change conferences. Sri Lanka, he was representing. Now at that time we had a very difficult task, because we knew that the global trend is towards renewables. But during that time coal was cheaper. Now it's the other way. Now coal is expensive, and day by day, now what we are planning is for the next 15-20 years. Now the CEB suggested that we will be commissioning a coal power plant in 2035, which will be there for another at least 30 years. So we are discussing about 2060 or beyond that. It's crazy to say that, well, the global trend is moving away from renewables towards renewables against coal. Now, Secretary is proposing that we will be commissioning a coal plant in 2035, which will be there for until 2060 and beyond. I mean, globally, coal prices are increasing, oil prices are increasing, natural gas prices are increasing, but global renewable energy prices are reducing. Even at current prices, coal is expensive, only second to oil. But down the line, in next 20 years, next 50 years, definitely renewables will be much cheaper than that. So it's of no use to say that coal is a cheaper option. It's not so. And beyond that, let me address these technical issues, these so-called technical issues. Well, fluctuations and storage. There's no issue as such because globally there are solutions for that. Now, how we absorb the current demand fluctuations? We absorb by our using our renewable energy resources, mainly hydro. Hydro can absorb fluctuations, not only oil and gas. Coal cannot absorb fluctuations. So absorbing means, and we can have a storage as well. So that's why we have already, even the CEB has agreed that we can go for pump storage power plants by 2026, which was to get more coal during that time. So that's an option. But most importantly, as quite rightly pointed out, now globally the storage costs are reducing, not because of power plants, but definitely by 2030 the vehicles on roads will be mainly running on electricity. So the diesel tank or petrol tank will be replaced by batteries. Because of that reason, globally storage issues will be much cheaper. So there's no technical issues as such. Even at present, we can absorb more and more renewables until 2020. There's no issue as such. So if you think about the future, where we have blessed with year-round sunshine, renewable prices are dropping down, storage prices are dropping, I don't see that by 2025 or beyond that there won't be coal. But what they are doing right now is they are paving the way for emergency power instead of accelerating renewables. That's the only case for coal. Coal is there.
Who benefits? This is my question. At the end of the day, who is benefiting as a result of the CEB's?
It's the oil-fired power plant owners.
Nishan, you mentioned something very important about how you need to, given the fluctuations, even while you have year-round sunshine, you have to take into account cloud cover, nighttime, rain, etc., etc., and therefore you need to have emergency power that you can power up quickly and power down quickly. You mentioned that this cannot be achieved through coal. Plant 3 at Norachole has been down since the 6th of November, I believe, since it caught fire. And I think last week 2 plants were down at Norachole of the 3, and 1 was working at limited capacity. Given the bad and bitter experience that we've had with coal so far, why is it that a section of within the CEB is so gung-ho on coal?
So I think it's a very good question to ask for an audit and an investigation as to why Norachole has been so weak and problematic as an implementation exercise. So we can't seriously get into implementing coal or any other kind of power plant when we have a history of poor implementation in which we fail to understand what went wrong and how we can ensure that the same thing is not repeated. So it's important to learn from the mistakes. Now, there's Auditor General's Department report in 2016 that it's not just about implementing the power plant, it's also about the purchase of coal. That the Lanka coal company, the buyer of coal on behalf of Norachole, has failed to comply with procurement guidelines, and the Auditor General estimates a loss of 4.4 billion between 2009 and 2016 because of flouting procurement guidelines in the purchase of coal. So I think, Sri Lanka, if we are to reduce costs, need to work on implementation, not just the renegotiating power agreements, but also need to look at what our implementation problems are, why there were failures, because we have a lot of engineers who should have provided the necessary oversight or contracted it appropriately to ensure that the plant was implemented properly. And then you have also failures in terms of procurement. I think that the third question is about the problem of what happens to costs or loss when there is a shortage. Now, the Ceylon Electricity Board gives numbers for the cost of unserved power, that is when there is a shortage, and they've increased that number from, say, 50 cents, US cents per kilowatt hour in 2011 to over 60 cents a kilowatt hour now. I don't know what number is right. But whatever number is right, it tells us that debating about whether to do coal or LNG and delaying is actually worse than doing either. So you are certainly better off implementing anything rather than not implementing, because the costs are rather high. That doesn't mean you should implement a bad plan, but that we must consider, I think, as PUCS is now saying, that the cost of delay is also very high. And I think the government really owes the country an explanation for why it is creating
Dr.
a future
Bhattacharya,
cost.
you, as Mr. Abhigunandan mentioned, you at COP6 you were a huge advocate for clean energy. You've worked previously, if I recall, clean energy and carbon. That was one of your papers that you've done. So there's something almost contradictory about the stance that you're taking. Are you just defending the CEB because there's no one from the CEB on the panel?
No, so I'm an environment scientist by a PhD now, sir. But
Yeah.
I believe environment seems it's not zero pollution. And also carrying capacity is there actually. We can have certain degree
No,
of,
if the country is to function,
Exactly.
there has to be a certain degree of pollution, but it has to be sustainable.
No, I mean, it's having 1 or 2 power plant with a lot of controls. I think it should be okay. I mean, you have to desulfurization, as stopping. You have to manage this. Of course, sometimes problem with the Norectola power plant as issues there. But having 1 or 2 coal plant, it should be okay, my personal opinion. But I am not talking about the government policy, which is discussed at the parliament, all the stakeholders. Now we are Parliament Oversight Committee, they are talking about. So now at the moment policies, we are thinking, so it's wrong actually, we are revising the energy policy, which will come next week to the cabinet possibly, finalize.
It's not yet approved.
I know,
It's
but
just a proposal of CEB trade unions.
No, not
He is defending them
No, Ashok,
because otherwise he cannot survive.
Ashok, don't nonsense actually. This policy was drafted by not CEB, but various stakeholders. Last 2-3 years drafted and discussed many.
Who are these stakeholders?
It was public newspapers, call for the comments, so many public comments are there. So this is actually a well drafted policy, but it will.
It's not yet approved, so let's keep quiet on that matter, because the existing one we have to rely on.
No, even existing energy policy, which is 2008, has the energy mix with the including coal.
Dr. Dimal, I would like to,
Yes.
before the break, just ask one question from you. You said repeated breakdowns warrant audit, right? Are you trying to say that it's incompetency, or could it be sabotage?
No, well, it's not me saying it, right? From CEB to everyone else involved agrees that the implementation of Norectola has been poor, and perhaps even maintenance after that is contested whether it has been adequate. Now, if you agree that this has been poorly implemented or poorly maintained, then you do need an audit. I mean, not necessarily as not necessarily to find fault or to prosecute, but at least to figure out what went wrong and how we can avoid repeating those mistakes. Because if you don't do that, then the cost and benefit of this power plant becomes much less than you can imagine. And I think it's a very serious issue that such an important power station that's contributing such a large part of our power is functioning poorly. And we can't afford to ignore that elephant in the room as we talk about our future power plant implementation, whether it be coal or anything else.
Can I correct this?
Sure.
And this is actually, I also heard of this Norectola power plants, very bad, breaking down, that's what the perception. Then recently, when we tried to get this maintenance agreement revised, the cabinet Treasury suggested, why don't you check what is this go wrong, why this not performing and all these things. Then we got a call for report after performance. We found actually last many years, Norectola power plants availability is more than 90% availability. This year, more than 85% availability throughout the year. We have a drought and almost we stopped hydropower. It was 10%, 9% of total. And we provided electricity complete from Norectola power plant. And when the statistics say, last whole years throughout, plant has been available more than 85%. A report says, and North America coal plant availability is less than 85. This plant has been available because of the lot of power shortages. They were not given the outage and maintenance throughout the running. So this is the plant which provides electricity throughout. That's the one opinion. I don't know. This, but we are all thinking.
Dr. Batagoda, you must publish that because
exactly,
that flies in the face of everything we know.
So we all think this. But as you said, now it's two plants are not running.
That's
but
right.
but it is the plant that provides electricity throughout.
Dr. Batagoda, you mentioned the word perception and misconception, but don't you think it is then your responsibility as a ministry secretary to ensure that correct information is disseminated among the public?
No, we are actually telling these reports published. So there are, for example, some ash issue and there are some dust issues out there. Those are, we have to accept the fact that because of the ash handling, dump not correct. We are working on it. Now we are having a wind barrier, all these things. But I'm talking about the power generation. I mean, you know, last year we had bad drought, you know, but we never have power cut, to be honest. So we were last 2 years was very bad time we had. Throughout, no hydro, lot of plant down, but Norathara power plant kept us going.
Dr. Batagoda, just on an end note, I just wanted to clarify this triangle of CEB, the ministry, and the PUCSL. What's the dynamic? So the ministry, you know, the CEB is under the ministry, and this is the regulatory body, the PUCSL. You seem to have, like Nadeem mentioned earlier, you seem to be sort of defending the CEB. But what is the government's relationship with the PUCSL? Aren't they there to regulate what the CEB has to say? So now when they regulate it and the CEB has the sort of backlash against it, why is it that the government just blindly seem to be taking the side of CEB?
It is not blindly. As now we are talking, discussing, I am summoning them for meeting, CEB. This is the discussion. This is a stakeholder consultation. I mean, just what CEB says they shouldn't accept. But they say CEB should accept.
Something has to happen at the end of the day. So
Exactly.
CEB is not accepting.
So we are actually
saying.
debating, discussing. That's a good sign for me actually. So CEB is.
So this is the discussion.
Yeah, exactly. This you are discussing. This out of this actually, if what, for example, I'm telling you an example. CEB proposed in the long-term generation plan 300 megawatt power plant in one of them. But PUC said no, 300 not correct. Bring it down to 150. CEB says, how can PUCSL reduce the plant size? Their job is to regulate us. It doesn't mean when you propose to build a 300 megawatt plant, they can't say 150, but their opinion. But the PUCSL say, in your report, you are comparing 300 versus 150, then select the 300. So they think 150 is better. So that debate. So in a way, they must debate each other. And finally, of course, must come to a conclusion.
Dr. Badu, I want to highlight an example of, you mentioned stakeholder collaboration, but it's important to understand the role of a regulator and the client. There's another example where there was stakeholder collaboration at the Colombo Stock Exchange, where they all collaborated, the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Colombo Stock Exchange and investors all collaborated. A handful of investors got exorbitantly rich, while the end result was millions in wealth was wiped out from the Colombo Stock Exchange. Are we going to see a similar kind of situation here with this? Is this going to be the end result of stakeholder collaboration? Because what's the point of having a regulator then?
No, I don't think
no
it will
one's
happen
listening to the regulator.
The ministry is there, government is there. I mean, we are there. I mean, they are CEB is one side. They are proposing technical solutions. PUC is there. So we are also there. We are not letting it go that way easily. I mean, so we accept the fact that both institutions have the right to defend themselves and suggest some. If you just CEB some proposal, they stamp. I don't think it's good. So when they accept, I think it's a good debate. It's I think healthy debate going on. Finally, I don't know who will win. I don't know. So call, but some people want no call. Some people want LNG, some people want a mix. So these are the life field.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Bhattagoda. A lot of interesting views, perspectives, so many questions to be asked. Ms. Asoka Abegunawardana said that there seems to be a tug of war, but between whom? We'll find out after this short commercial break. Stay with us.